Welcome to the Story World channel. We're delighted to have you here. Sit back, relax, and immerse yourself in captivating tales. Enjoy your viewing experience. Mr. Parker descended the creaking stairs, leading to the dimly lit basement. Clutched in his weathered hand was a large, ancient key that jingled with each step. As the beam of his flashlight pierced through the darkness, it revealed a tangled web of cobwebs adorning the walls. The flickering light transformed the cobwebs into ethereal dancers, as if tiny magical creatures were swaying to an unseen rhythm. In the midst of this eerie spectacle, Olivia, a young girl, felt a sudden surge of fear. She tightly closed her eyes, then hurriedly followed her grandfather's lead. Her curiosity piqued. She couldn't resist asking, "What's in here, Grandpa?" Her voice trembled with a mixture of fear and amazement. With a determined stride, the old man pushed aside an abandoned horse harness that had been left lying there for who knows how long. His footsteps echoed in the silence as he made his way towards the wall. "Here," he said, gesturing for Olivia to join him. "Do you see that spot on the wall?" Olivia held the flashlight steady and noticed a distinct yellowish mark on the otherwise gray wall. Her grandfather, using his weathered nail, gently scraped at the spot, revealing that it was made of clay. "Something is hidden here," the elderly man murmured. "And you must promise not to tell anyone about it. Understand?" Eager to uncover the mystery, Olivia inquired, "What's hidden there, Grandpa? And why can't we tell anyone?" A mischievous smile played on the old man's lips as he whispered in her ear, "There's a treasure here, my dear. An old treasure left behind by the former owners, the nobles. When the army came to the village to liberate everyone, the nobles grew fearful and began hiding their precious belongings. They were exceedingly greedy when it came to their treasures. When my time comes and I'm gone, and you've grown up, you'll need money. This treasure will help you stand on your own 2 feet." Mr. Parker picked up a heavy hammer from the nearby table, but after a moment's contemplation, he set it down and flashed a warm smile at his granddaughter. "Well, let's go, Olivia. And remember, you must keep this a secret," he cautioned. Olivia nodded with determination. "I understand, Grandpa," she said earnestly. "I promise not to tell anyone." The elderly man gently caressed Olivia's tousled chestnut hair, a mixture of pride and love in his eyes. Taking her hand, he led her out of the basement, back into the world above. Upon her return, Olivia found her mother, Helen, sitting in the yard beneath the shade of a sprawling apple tree. Helen was engrossed in a book, occasionally swatting pesky mosquitoes. She wore a black mourning veil draped over her head, and her early gray hair peeked out from beneath it. Olivia approached her and settled down beside her. "How is Grandpa doing?" her mother asked, not lifting her gaze from her book. "Is he feeling okay?" Olivia shrugged. "Seems like it," she replied. "But he's a little sad, just like you." Her mother set down her book, turned to Olivia, and pinched her nose gently. "Don't pay attention to that," she said with a sigh, then resumed her reading. Olivia understood everything. She too felt sadness. Not long ago, she discovered that her father had died while working in a distant place, and she would never see him again. Her mother assured her that her father had gone to a better place and was now happy. But Olivia didn't believe it. Every night, she would wake up to the sound of her mother softly crying in the kitchen's darkness and silence, and Olivia would cry along with her. The only thing that kept Olivia's anxiety and endless sadness at bay was the anticipation of starting school in just 2.5 months. Soon, she would be entering 1st grade, sitting behind a desk while a young teacher imparted knowledge to her. There would be other kids there too, and Olivia looked forward to getting to know them. Olivia's best friend was the boy next door, Willie. They were always together, playing ball, sneaking into other people's gardens, and flying kites. Olivia tried not to pay attention to the fact that Willie had one flaw. He was born with a shorter right leg, so when he ran, his leg couldn't keep up, and he had to hop, propelling his right leg forward. But other than that, he was no different from the other kids. He rode his bike just as well as anyone else and went fishing with them. Olivia never reminded him of his ailment. The summer days flew by quickly, and before she knew it, the mint-scented July had passed, and the starry August was drawing to a close. Olivia's excitement grew as the days went by. In just a short while, she would embark on her new journey in first grade, eagerly awaiting the adventures that awaited her. Olivia and her mother were busy preparing for her first day of school. They embarked on a shopping trip together in the city, ensuring they had all the necessary supplies. However, amidst the hustle and bustle, they realized that they had forgotten a backpack filled with notebooks, stationery, and most importantly, a school uniform. Olivia's mother often retrieved a strict yet beautiful dress from the wardrobe. She carefully spread it on the bed and examined every stitch, making sure it was perfect for Olivia to wear on her first day of school. As early September approached, a visitor named Jacob appeared at Olivia's and her mother's house. He was a tall man, around 30 years old, the same age as Helen, Olivia's mother. Jacob entered the house and greeted Olivia and Helen. They all sat on the sofa in the living room, and Jacob took off his backpack, revealing a paper bundle. "Here are his things," Jacob said, pulling out the bundle. "I thought it would be better if they got to you." He handed the bundle to Helen, and as she unwrapped it, Olivia caught sight of her father's wristwatch, his comm phone, and his wallet. Helen opened the wallet, and a folded photograph fell out. "That's me and my husband on vacation," Helen said, smiling sadly, nodding at the picture. "Ben loved taking me to resorts. He never spared any money for that." Helen gazed at the image of her husband with teary eyes and carefully placed the card back into his wallet. "Thank you," she said, turning to Jacob. "Did you know him well?" Jacob lowered his head and remained silent for a long time, his gaze fixed on the floor. Finally, he spoke, his voice filled with sorrow. "I saw him die in front of my eyes," Jacob admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "I saw him fall into the river." Helen gestured for Olivia to go for a walk. "Sweetheart, why don't you go outside for a bit?" she said, her voice gentle. Olivia hesitated for a moment, but eventually went out the door, pressing her ear against the lock to listen. She heard Jacob recounting the tragic event to her mother in a hushed tone. "He slipped and fell into the water," Jacob explained softly. "And then all the logs came crashing down on him. I saw his eyes at that moment, such a terrible look. And then the logs covered him, and I didn't see him anymore. The divers never found his body. Maybe the current took him away, or he got—" Jacob trailed off, his voice filled with sorrow and uncertainty. "Stuck in some pit at the bottom," he continued, his voice heavy with sorrow. He sighed abruptly, as if catching his breath after a long run. "These things survived because they were in his jacket, which was left on the shore." Olivia pressed her ear harder against the lock, straining to hear. She could hear her mother's quiet sobbing, and her heart sank. The weight of sadness became unbearably heavy, and Olivia couldn't help but cry, sitting down on the floor beside the door. Soon, the school that Olivia had eagerly anticipated finally began. Every day, she would don her brand new, fancy uniform and head off to school. For reasons Olivia didn't quite understand, Jacob never seemed to be in a rush to leave. Whenever Olivia returned home from school, she would find him sitting with her mother in the kitchen, engaged in quiet conversations and laughter. One day, while Olivia's mother and Jacob were watching TV together, Olivia mustered the courage to ask, "Mom, is Jacob going to live with us now?" Jacob looked at her, called her over, and sat her on his lap. "And what about you? Are you against it?" he asked, looking straight into Olivia's eyes. "Don't you like me?" Olivia didn't know how to respond. Nervously, she played with the edges of her dress, searching for an answer in her head. "So you'll be my dad?" she asked, after much deliberation. Both Jacob and her mother burst out laughing in response. Smart beyond her years, Jacob remarked, glancing at Olivia's mother. Just like Ben, Helen chimed in. Time passed, and Jacob never left. Olivia gradually came to accept that he would always be there with them. Before Jacobmas, Jacob went away for a couple of days and returned with many intriguing things. Olivia was fascinated by the gun traps, the moose head with its enormous antlers, and the various hunting paraphernalia he had brought home. "Oh, who's this?" Olivia exclaimed when Jacob arrived home from the street, pulling out a small woolen ball from his pocket. The ball squeaked, jumped up on its tiny legs, and ran towards Olivia. "This is Rex," Jacob said, stroking the puppy affectionately. "I'll take him hunting." Rex squeaked and licked Olivia's finger, instantly winning her heart. She took him in her arms and cradled him like a baby. 4 months later, Rex had become an inseparable part of their family, bringing joy and playfulness into their lives. Rex had grown a little, but it turned out that he was not suitable for hunting at all. Rex proved to be difficult to train, not understanding commands, and often running around the house, oblivious to anyone but himself. Jacob would frequently get frustrated with him, pulling hard on the leash and even hitting him on the back. Rex would cower in fear, whimpering, seeking help from Olivia. "Don't hit him," Helen once said to Jacob. "Why are you being so cruel? It will only make the dog worse." Jacob glared at her, his tone filled with anger. "It's none of your business," he hissed, but quickly added, "Sorry, I'm just so tired of this fool, and I have no strength." He waved his hand dismissively towards Rex, who seemed unresponsive to training. "Let Olivia deal with this glutton." Olivia, who had received Rex as a unique gift, decided to teach him in her own way. She patiently gave the dog simple commands, rewarding him with treats for every success. Before long, Rex learned to sit, lie down, and bark on command from his little mistress. Willie even contributed to Rex's education by teaching him to catch mice. He would shout out the locations of the mouse holes, and Rex, using his front paws, skillfully dug through piles of dry leaves, successfully catching the timid rodents hiding there. "They've turned a dog into a cat." Jacob grumbled with annoyance as Rex proudly brought home yet another mouse. He disgustingly threw the captured mouse into the trash can and kicked Rex in frustration. Rex, growing in size and snarling, would retreat under the bed, only emerging at Olivia's command. Years passed, and Olivia completed elementary school, then middle school and high school. She was now in her final year, contemplating her upcoming adult life. She often visited her grandfather's grave to reminisce about the old days, seeking solace and guidance. Sitting by the grave, Olivia pondered what she would become once she finished school, what she would do with her life. She didn't have all the answers and seemed to silently ask her buried grandfather for advice. The girl had developed a fondness for medicine and helping people. She had dreams of going to the city and enrolling in a medical school, aspiring to make a difference in people's lives through her work. Olivia had made up her mind long ago that she would excel in her biology and chemistry exams, ensuring she would secure free education. However, she still needed extra money to sustain herself in the city, and she had yet to devise a plan on how to acquire it. Her mother had been unwell for a year and a half, making it impossible to rely on her for financial support since Helen herself required assistance. Olivia wasn't sure if she should ask Jacob for money. To be honest, she didn't particularly like him. Jacob had become consumed with his business, focusing on his small goat farm where he invested all his money and energy. His business was somehow surviving as he took out loans, negotiated with investors, and acquired various goats. However, the goats produced such a small amount of milk that it would have been easier to slaughter them. Yet, Jacob persevered with unwavering determination, seeking a golden opportunity, pouring money into his business like a furnace. Olivia sighed as the twilight thickened over the cemetery. Somewhere nearby, concealed by dense foliage, a nightingale sang its melodic tune, while buzzing beetles flew from tree to tree, resembling miniature air fighters. She rose from the moss-covered bench, casting one final glance at her grandfather's grave. Suddenly, vivid memories of a distant summer day flashed in her mind. She recalled following her grandfather down into the dark basement of his house, where a yellow spot appeared on the wall. Her grandfather wielded a hammer, his smile lighting up the room, as he recounted tales of the Civil War and hidden treasures. Olivia smiled, realizing that those treasures were still concealed within the wall, behind a thin clay barrier. She decided that she would retrieve them and put them into circulation, just as her grandfather had intended. Those treasures, after many years, would finally serve a purpose, benefiting both her and society. Olivia lingered a little longer by her grandfather's grave before slowly walking along the path leading to the cemetery gates. She carefully navigated through the darkness, ensuring not to stumble over the gravestones that were barely visible in the dim light. Entering the house, Olivia quietly slipped off her shoes and called out to her mother, but there was no response from the enveloping darkness that filled the home. Olivia cautiously made her way towards the couch, where her mother was usually found. As she drew closer, her heart sank. Her mother lay sprawled on the couch, with one hand hanging limply. Olivia hesitantly reached out to lift her mother's hand, only to recoil in shock. It was as cold as ice. She fumbled for the switch behind the couch and clicked it, flooding the room with warm yellow light. Overwhelmed, Olivia collapsed to the floor with an inhuman moan. Her mother's pale face stared back at her, her eyes wide open, their gaze empty and lifeless. Olivia was struck by the terrible reality. Her mother had passed away. She sat beside the cooling body, resting her head on her mother's chest, and wept. In the wake of Helen's funeral, Olivia closed herself off from the world. She felt utterly alone in the vast universe. Her mother, father, and grandfather had all passed away, and Willie had gone off to study in the city. Jacob, who had once been a part of their lives, seemed to care little about her. Olivia eagerly awaited the end of this dreadful spring, when she could take her exams and follow Willie to the city. Immersing herself in her studies became her sole lifeline, a way to momentarily escape the tormenting reality that haunted her soul. One day, as Olivia sat at her desk, engrossed in exam preparations, Jacob unexpectedly asked her a question. "Listen, is it true what they say, that there is a treasure somewhere in the village?" His words struck Olivia like a bolt of lightning. If Jacob found out about the treasure, she knew he wouldn't rest until he discovered its location. And once he found it, he would undoubtedly keep the treasure for himself. Trying to conceal her anxiety, Olivia replied dismissively, "Nonsense. What kind of treasures could there be here? Are we living in Treasure Island or something?" Jacob burst into laughter. "People are much more inventive than you think," he said, squinting mischievously. "Nevertheless, maybe there is something." Olivia couldn't bear it any longer. Frustration and worry overwhelmed her, causing her to slam shut her textbook, the noise reverberating through the room. The thought of Jacob pursuing the treasure, potentially endangering the tranquility of her village, was unbearable to her. She couldn't let it happen. "I don't know," Olivia cried out, tears streaming down her face. "I don't know anything about any treasures. Please, it hurts me." Desperately, Olivia tried to break free from Jacob's tight grip, but he clung to her like a hawk clutching its prey. His eyes burned with a predatory fire as he yelled, "Where did your grandfather hide the treasure? I know they're in this house. He didn't hand them over to the grave, did he?" Fear consumed Olivia, her body trembling. She sobbed uncontrollably, shaking her head. "I don't know," she exclaimed. "I don't know." "You're lying," Jacob hissed, his grip tightening. "Your grandfather probably hid them for you. Hurry up and tell me, or I'll make you." As Jacob raised his hand, ready to strike Olivia, a sense of despair washed over her. She could feel the sting of his previous blow on her burning cheek. Tears welled up in her eyes, mixing with the pain. "I don't know," she insisted, her voice quivering. "I don't know." You're crazy. You have an obsessive idea. Olivia's words only fueled Jacob's rage. He unleashed his fury, striking her once again. The sound of the slap echoed through the room, leaving Olivia feeling helpless and defenseless. She crumpled to the floor, her face flushed with both physical and emotional pain. In that moment, a surge of determination welled up within Olivia. She refused to let Jacob's obsession and violence consume her. She would find a way to protect herself, her family's legacy, and the tranquility of their village. With a resolute spirit, Olivia silently vowed to unravel the truth about the hidden treasure and prevent Jacob from laying his hands on it. Olivia, her hair gripped tightly by Jacob, was forcibly dragged out of the house and into the yard. "You'll stay here, you piece of trash," he hissed, his anger palpable. With a cruel determination, he continued to pull Olivia, finally bringing her into the barn. "And while I search your grandpa's house for those damn treasures," Jacob sneered. He locked the barn door with a massive oak bolt, ensuring Olivia's confinement. Satisfied with his control, Jacob shook himself, as if shedding any lingering doubts, and returned inside the house. He retrieved the keys to Mr. Parker's house, which were kept in a box, tucking them safely into his pockets. Whistling a tune of false cheer, he strolled outside, as if he had already discovered the treasures and was now immeasurably wealthy. In his zealous quest for riches, Jacob thoroughly scoured every nook and cranny of Mr. Parker's house. Yet, despite his fervent search, he found nothing but junk and cobwebs, clinging to forgotten corners. Frustration overtook him, and he kicked a chair in his path, a futile outlet for his anger. "It's okay, I'll come back here tomorrow," Jacob reassured himself, his determination unyielding. "I'll search everything again." Returning home, Jacob's first stop was the barn. "I didn't find anything," he stated matter-of-factly to Olivia, who sat where he had left her. "But it's okay, tomorrow will be another day. And the day after that, and the day after that. I'll keep looking, and you'll stay here." Defiantly, Olivia spoke up from within the confines of the barn, her voice filled with conviction. "You're crazy, Jacob. You're sick. Let me go. I'm scared." Tears streamed down her face as she pleaded for her freedom. Unperturbed, Jacob kicked the barn door with all his might. "Scream all you want. No one will hear you," he declared coldly before turning and leaving, the sound of the lock clicking into place. Left alone in the darkness, Olivia sat in despair for what felt like an eternity. Hour after hour passed, but she had no sense of time. Deprived of clocks or phones, she occasionally glanced through the narrow cracks in the barn, but they offered only glimpses of an impenetrable darkness. Frustrated and desperate, Olivia attempted to strike and shake the logs of the barn, hoping for an escape route. However, they were firmly nailed down, refusing to yield to her feeble attempts. Exhausting all possibilities, she found herself helplessly sinking to the earthen floor, overcome with tears and sorrow. Unbeknownst to Olivia, in her moment of grief, Rex had managed to find his way into the barn through a small hole in the corner. Silently, he crawled up to Olivia's side, sensing her distress. "Rex," exclaimed Olivia as the dog nuzzled her tear-streaked face. "How did you end up here?" As if understanding her question, Rex darted to the corner of the barn and stopped near the small hole through which he had entered. Olivia desperately tried to dig deeper into the pit with her broken nails, but without proper tools, it seemed impossible. Unfortunately, the barn held no shovels or other helpful items. Defeated, she sank to the floor, feeling her exhaustion overcome her, and drifted into an uneasy sleep. The sound of Jacob's voice broke through Olivia's slumber, rousing her from her troubled rest. "Good morning," he called out, his voice lacking any warmth. "I brought you some food." He slid a pack of dried noodles and a bottle of water under the door. Olivia eagerly seized the noodles, tearing open the package and biting into the dry brick with her teeth. She chewed mechanically, her mind preoccupied with the events unfolding around her. "Well, have you decided anything?" Jacob inquired through the door. "Will you tell me where the gold is?" "I don't know anything," Olivia replied, her mouth full of noodles. "I need to continue my preparations for exams. Let me go." Jacob left her response unanswered, and Olivia heard his fading footsteps. She lost all sense of time within the damp and gloomy confines of the shed. Uncertain of how long she had been trapped, she realized she couldn't escape on her own. With no one to help her, Olivia made a decision. She would reveal her grandfather's secret to her stepfather, allowing him to choke on the treasures. "I'll still put him behind bars for what he did," Olivia whispered, a grim smirk forming on her face as she stroked Rex. Determination burned within her, fueled by the thirst for revenge. As she drifted back into sleep, Olivia found herself immersed in a dream. Willie appeared, and together they ran through a field overgrown with vibrant flowers, basking in the warm embrace of a July sunset. Birds chirped joyfully around them, while crickets serenaded them with a soul-stirring melody. Willie shouted something, but Olivia couldn't discern the words. Nonetheless, her laughter echoed through the dream, a symbol of pure happiness. Rex, startled by Olivia's laughter, balked momentarily but soon settled back down. Olivia remained oblivious to Rex's reaction as she continued to sleep. Meanwhile, within her dream, Willie called her Granny, and she reveled in the musical quality of his voice. Just as Willie shouted, "Hello, Granny," Olivia abruptly woke from her dream, her heart pounding with a mix of confusion and anticipation. Olivia blinked, yawned, and then heard a muffled voice coming from beyond the pine-boarded wall. "Have you arrived, my dear grandson?" the voice called out, sounding slightly distorted. "Yes, Granny, just 5 minutes ago," Willie's voice responded from outside. Olivia couldn't believe her ears. It was Willie's voice. She leaped to her feet and rushed to the pit, where Rex's hole led to the street where Willie was standing. Struggling to stick her head in the pit, she was met with a sudden brightness that made her squint. "Willie," Olivia shouted, her voice filled with relief. "I'm here." Willie, who was standing nearby, quickly approached and sat next to her. "Hello," he gasped, catching his breath. "What are you doing here?" Olivia, wiping tears of joy from her eyes, proceeded to tell Willie everything that had happened. "Hold on a minute," Willie said, hastily getting up. "I'll free you." Determined, he swiftly climbed over the fence, limped to the shed door, and removed the bolt. With a creak, he swung the door open and called for Olivia. "We need to run to Grandpa's house," Olivia whispered, tightly embracing Willie. "We have to get the treasure before he does." Without hesitation, they raced down the street, paying no mind to the curious onlookers who stared in confusion at their urgent sprint. Bursting through the heavy gates, they stormed into the yard and made their way to the cellar. As they descended into its depths, the air turned cool and damp, enveloping them like a cave. Olivia reached for the old lantern hanging on the wall, flicked the switch, and ignited the flame. The cellar came alive with a dim, flickering glow as Olivia cautiously began to walk along the wall. With each step, she felt a surge of anticipation coursing through her veins. When she reached the familiar room, she approached the gray wall directly in front of her. Spotting the hammer resting in the same place it had been 11 years ago, Olivia couldn't help but smile. Grandpa hadn't been there since then. Fixing her gaze on a yellowish spot on the wall, Olivia firmly grasped the hammer. She struck the stained clay, causing dust to billow into the air. Undeterred, she wiped it off and struck the spot again. After 5 forceful strikes, the clay barrier finally broke, revealing a small hidden compartment. Inside, Olivia discovered a bundle containing tangled chains, 10 gleaming gold rings, pendants adorned with delicate stones, crosses, a tiara, a brass crucifix, and pages from an ancient book that had turned green with age. Olivia admired her incredible find for a few seconds, feeling the weight of its history in her hands. Then, with careful precision, she meticulously rewrapped everything and concealed the bundle under her shirt, close to her heart. The treasures would be kept safe until she could unravel their secrets and determine their true worth. When Willie met Olivia at the basement door, he announced, "I called the police. Your stepfather won't be able to get away now." Olivia nodded, relief washing over her. "I'm glad you came," she said with a smile. "I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't." Willie shrugged, his eyes filled with a mix of surprise and satisfaction. "It's good that I got sick and returned home," he laughed. Olivia joined in, their laughter mingling in the air, bringing a sense of lightness to the evening. Later that night, they found themselves sitting in Olivia's house. Her stepfather was being interrogated at the police station, and the weight of the day began to lift from their shoulders. Taking a sip of tea, Willie turned to Olivia and asked, "What do you plan to do?" "I want to go to medical school to become a pediatrician, but I haven't decided for sure," Olivia replied without hesitation, her eyes filled with determination. Willie wrinkled his nose, teasing her gently. "It's hard there," he remarked. Olivia giggled, her confidence unwavering. "It's okay, I'm a capable student," she said, finishing her tea. As the weariness settled in, Olivia announced, "I'm going to sleep," letting out a yawn. The day had been so complicated, filled with unexpected twists and turns. Willie nodded, understanding the need for rest. "Take care," he said, buttoning his coat and reaching for his cookies. Summoning her strength, Olivia hurried after him. "Wait," she called out, grabbing his hand. "Take this," she said, placing one of the rings she had found on Willie's palm. Willie looked at the unexpected gift with surprise. "Wow," he said, genuine appreciation in his voice. "Thank you." In a moment of pure spontaneity, he kissed Olivia on the cheek. Sensing the electricity in the air, Olivia's heart skipped a beat as she grabbed his face with her hands and kissed his lips. In that instance, she realized that Willie was more than just a friend. He was something greater than the boy from the neighborhood with whom she used to play ball. They had grown up, and their childhood friendship had seamlessly blossomed into a deep adult love. They stood there, holding each other, their futures intertwined. The certainty of a shared future lay before them, a promising path they were ready to walk together.